Bonjour, good morning, buenos dias, welcome back. I am Victor TAFUR, Associate Executive Governor of the International Council of Environmental Law, ICEL. I now have the privilege to transit from ecological law to artificial intelligence and more broadly cognitive technologies. Both, I think, are present and future elements of these new laws for ecological resilience. And to get to the topic today, I have with me Andrea LEITER. Via Zoom, I have Rutger van ZUIDAM. I'm practicing my Dutch lately. And we have a video presentation by David FREESTONE. And with these individuals and partners, ICEL has been working a year and a half, trying to work on this topic. And I think we have some good stories to convey, which is that this is happening and it's present. However, there are some caveats. It is very difficult to work in this new adventure because we don't speak the same language and we're learning to what we all call now co-creating this new approach. So without further delay, I'm going to actually start with the video talk by David FREESTONE. David is the Executive Secretary of the Sargasses Sea Commission. He's also a visiting professor at the George Washington University School of Law. He's the founder, editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Marine and Coastal Law, now in its 36th year. So with that, I invite the production to put his video talk. Thank you.
My thanks to Victor and also to Nick Robinson for inviting me to be part of this panel. Thank you all for being here to listen, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there in person. But I'm delighted to contribute to this panel because artificial intelligence, and particularly remote sensing, has been a very important part of the work that we've been doing on the Sargasses Sea. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Sargasses Sea itself, why it's important. I'm going to talk about the Sargasses Sea Commission and its work, and then you'll see when I show you the size of this ecosystem, this remote high seas ecosystem, which is 2 million square miles, why we need quite the state-of-the-art remote sensing and also the AI inputs from the telemetry, etc. We have a number of partners who've been working with us closely. We did take part in the Millennium Odyssey process, but we have established partners who've been helping us with this process, and that particularly NASA, and they have a custom developed pilot project called Coverage, which I'll say something about in a minute, which actually uses the Sargasses Sea as a pilot and is using all the data that they've been able to gather on oceanography and then combining it with other data as well. We also have a key partner as Global Fishing Watch. Paul Woods has been working with us very closely for some years now, and they've been very generous in their sharing of the data that they have. And then the final, in many ways, most crucial partner to us is the Duke University Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab. Professor Pat Halpin directs, who've been working with us since 2010, actually, and they're going to be putting together this into a custom-built portal to actually help us with the governance aspect. And then I'll finish with a few words about the large grant we just got from the Global Environment Facility, which enable us to do this in a more systematic way. So why is the Sargasses Sea important? Ecologically and legally, really. It's from an ecological point of view, it's a unique open ocean, sargassum-based ecosystem. The sargassum weed itself, algae, is holopelagic, which means it reproduces by fragmentation without contact with the bottom. So it's the only sea without coasts, although Bermuda's nestles in the middle. And it's important to the life history of many species. The European and the American eels, Anguilla rostrata, the anguillid eels, are catadromous. That means they live their life, most of their lives in fresh and brackish water, and then they migrate for reasons we have no understanding of at all, or how they do it, or where they actually spawn in the Sargasses Sea, or certainly in the gyre, and then die, and then the little guys find their way home. So this is an amazing feat of nature, which we really know very little about. Similarly, a number of species of endangered sea turtles use a sargassum for the famous lost years when they're growing up as a nurturing habitat. Also important for tunas, billfishes, sharks, etc., particularly the poor beagle, which pups in the Sargasses Sea. We can see that it's important from this as a graphic representation, which shows not only the uses, as probably figures are a little bit out of date now, this is some years old, and particularly eel values are much higher than indicated here, but it also has importance. It's important for the ecosystem services it provides. From climate point of view, the sargassum is obviously a carbon sink, and you see here the first good picture of it. You can see that this is the anticyclonic gyre of the North Atlantic subtropical gyre, which collects plastics and garbage as well as sargassum. So it's an important system from that point of view, and also showing some of the impacts of human activities. But from a legal point of view, it's also important because it's one of the last great gaps in the management system at a regional level. We have tuna commissions that cover pretty well the whole ocean. So ICAT, the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, covers both North and South Atlantic, but most of the FINAS only covers tunas and tuna-like species. But for other species, particularly deep sea species and the more general species, there is no regulatory environment south of 34, is it, near the Bermuda. So here we're Northwest Atlantic, we have NAFO, the Northwest Atlantic Fisheries Organization in dark, and to the right, NEAF, the Northeast Atlantic Fisheries Organization. Those are the high seas regulatory areas, but nothing beneath that until you get down to the Southeast Atlantic. There is currently a proposal for another organization which is advisory to take over the responsibilities of this area, but I've been talking about that for some time. So the Sargasses Sea project really has isolated an area, a core area of the Sargasses Sea in the western basin of the North Atlantic, west of the mid-Atlantic ridge here, which I'm just pointing out, excludes the EZ of Bermuda, and this rather strange shape is actually 2 million square miles. So led by the government of Bermuda, the idea of this project is to achieve international recognition of the importance of the Sargasses Sea, which I think we're actually well on the way to doing if we haven't done it already, and then to work with its existing organizations, a simple fragmented system to put conservation measures in place and to sort of learn lessons from whether it can be done or not. Our first real success here is 2014, where we had 5 governments sign the Hamilton Declaration on Collaboration for the Conservation of the Sargasses Sea. Sylvia Earle was one of our ambassadors for that, head of our previous steering committee. We now have 10 governments that have signed this: the Azores, the Bahamas, Bermuda, BVI, Canada, the Cayman Islands, Dominican Republic, Monaco, UK, and United States, and also a number of governments that are fellow travelers: Netherlands, Sweden, South Africa, but also France, which is financing one of our major activities, and together with other observer organizations. Fairly lean structure, a meeting of signatories. Now, since under COVID, we've been meeting more regularly than we have in the past. Sargasses Sea Commission, which is made up of volunteers who serve in their personal capacity, and then the lean and mean Sargasses Sea Secretariat, which is basically me and Faye, and the financial mechanism to support that. Role is to exercise a stewardship role for the Sargasses Sea, keep its health and productivity and resilience under review, and to develop a work program for its conservation. Those are our members from Bermuda, the UK, Bahamas, Canada, the US, and from the UK and Canada as well. And the threats are pretty well the same as everywhere else. Climate change really should come first, and ocean acidification, but pollution, discharges and spills, plastics, fishing. We've seen increases in fishing, I'll show you later. Maybe sargassum harvesting, possibly deep sea mining on the mid-Atlantic ridge, and maybe underwater cables. So with the help of Ocean Mind, we did actually get some figures on AIS data on fishing activity in the Sargasses Sea. 2010, it just seemed to be fairly fairly light, but we're going to seeing a gradual increase in fishing activity. This is 2014, 15, and 16. So already increases, and it's not only just the volume of it, but also moving increasingly towards Bermuda, towards the center. And this is from 2018. This is this figures from a figure from Global Fishing Watch, which shows that whereas quite a substantial amount of activity to the east, but also to the west. This here is probably the billfish, swordfish, U.S. swordfish fleets here, but this is unexplained. We don't know really. We know the nationality of the vessels, but not what they're catching. Similarly, other human activities, major human activities of vessel movements. So here, this is a AIS snapshot from 2012, 1 month's activity. You can see that the major routes, North Atlantic, it's across the North Atlantic from Europe to the US, and you can see these go into the main ports in the US, but also down to the Panama Canal. And these are evidence that this is increasing. You know, that there's been a threefold increase in vessel traffic since 1990, and there's been a major increase in the Atlantic because of the widening of the Panama Canal. So you can see this beginning to happen here in these
empezando aquí en estas imágenes de estas rutas están muy establecidas.
And then this is also thanks to Global Fishing Watch in snapshot of 1 month in December of 2018, vessels over 100 meters long, which are pretty big. This is a remote area of the ocean, so it's quite staggering the amount of activity there actually is. So our partners in this, in the remote sensing part of the activities, really are NASA, as I indicated, this in-kind partnership. It has the support of the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites, CEOS, which means it has the support of other space agencies as well. And its phases include, in the future now, include tagging animal, introduction of data on tagged animals, fishing and shipping information based on AIS. So this is really state-of-the-art. You see a tremendous tagging event there. And you can see here, I won't spend too long on this, but you can see the Sargasses Sea is one of the, it's not even possible, we are the key partner on that. Global Fishing Watch I already mentioned. This is a wonderful operation. Their big business model I love, which is to gather as much information as they can and to make it available to everybody in an easy format. And they've been tremendous partners in helping us to access and the best information in the easiest possible way. And then, as I said, Duke, the Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab, led by Professor Pat Halpin. They have a number of projects. One is the famous one is MICO, the Migratory Connectivity Project. Gives you some idea of the importance of the North Atlantic. And they're looking at this at a basin scale, but they're also doing a lot of modeling, which will show, so we're introducing the animal movements and to help us with making governance decisions as we move forward. And there's one great example is the humpback whales, which migrate through the Sargasses Sea, through Bermuda as well, and winter in the Caribbean, like many tourists, and then they return to the cooler waters in the summer. So this is running out of time, but a short couple of slides about the project, which is now financed by the Global Environment Facility. The UNDP is the implementing agency, and UNESCO's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission is the executing agency. It's a $3 million project. And what we're doing is basically an ecosystem diagnostic. So we're collecting as much information as we can as a baseline on the Sargasses Sea ecosystem. So using all this remote sensing data that we've just been talking about, and then we use that as a basis for developing a roadmap. How would we move then towards an ecosystem-based approach to governance, the conservation of Sargasses Sea, this huge 2 million square mile ecosystem, ICES ecosystem, and then a strategic action program to define what we actually need in terms of management and associated priorities. And of course, knowledge management is part of that. So I'm sorry I can't answer questions as I'm probably still in bed, but thank you very much for your attention.
So now you can see why the Sargasses Sea was a great case study, a great partner. They had the science with various layers, governance structure, and had already ventured into this technology. So I think that helps set up the stage now for Andrea to come and talk to us about establishing an agency for nature, the concept of sovereign nature, as she works for the Sovereign Nature Initiative. Andrea, She is a professor at the Amsterdam Center for International Law and the Director of Research at the Sovereign Nature Initiative. Her research focuses on global economic inequality and lawmaking through private actors with a focus on digital economy. Andrea.
Thank you very much. It's really a great honor and pleasure to address this audience here today, and I'm particularly grateful to Professor Nick Robinson for facilitating this panel. I am here to give you a glimpse of the work we do at the Sovereign Nature Initiative, a Dutch not-for-profit foundation, and to hopefully intrigue you to wanting to know more about it. On a fundamental level, Sovereign Nature Initiative is an applied research institution that works at the intersection between ecology, economy, and emerging technologies. Next slide, please. So the vision of the Sovereign Nature Initiative was strongly inspired and partly co-built by the developers of a project called TerraZero. In a concept paper in 2016, they suggested the following. Consider a self-driving car that is owned by a corporation and operates under its control and to its profit. With blockchain and machine learning technology, such cars could become self-owning cars that are able to sustain themselves through automated financial transactions, and thereby can charge customers or pay for gas and repairs and control their own performance. Blockchain technology enables the establishment of decentralized autonomous organizations, meaning pieces of code that run on a decentralized network of computers and are thereby automated. Part of this DAO is a cryptocurrency wallet with which the car can manage its own finances in the form of tokens. Now, instead of a car, think of pieces of nature, like a river, parts of a forest, or a lake that becomes self-owning and self-governing. This was the proposition of TerraZero, and it has inspired a wave of projects innovating what we call tokenized techno-ecological agency. So Sovereign Nature Initiative grew out of the, next slide, please. The Sovereign Nature Initiative grew out of this inspiration and has developed a vision to, on the one hand, provoke a fundamental shift in the relationship between nature and humans with the aim of acknowledging nature's sovereignty. We want to move from a relationship of dominance and separation towards one of cohabitation. And we want to do this in order to realize our human responsibility through a profound reconsideration of the value of nature beyond extraction and exploitation. These are very big words, and it's important to emphasize that we do not provide answers, but that we try to ask better questions. The 2 points of entry we want to work from are, broadly speaking, identity and value. When engaging with identity, we are trying to find ways to enable the agency of techno-ecological organisms. This agency is tied to economic value. Economic power is a strong force, and we are trying to what we call flipping the economics. So we are trying to find ways to revalue the value of nature. Next slide, please. In order to develop these approaches, we are building a community to support the joining together of 4 different streams. On the one hand, we have a stream on research, which is really strongly my domain, in which we want to work with thinkers such as the ones we have seen here today, who are thinking deeply and profoundly about these problems and questions, tying them back historically, anchoring them in the philosophical canon. We would like to collaborate on the academic scale so as to secure that we are really working on the scientific basis. The second angle with which we work is what we call storytelling. And here we believe that it's really that narratives have a strong force, building new stories and different stories about the relationship between the human and the non-human world can be really a facilitator for change. So we have a program for writers in residence who are developing this part in different variants, however they see fit. The third stream is what we call artistic expressions. And here we are trying to make nature sensible through the senses. So we collaborate with artists who work with virtual and augmented reality to enable another experience of nature. And finally, and importantly, technology. So here we are trying to rely on emerging technologies to foster this kind of transformation. And we work mainly through the mode of hackathons. This is also how we collaborated before with ISIL and the Sargasses Sea Commission. So I just want to give you a little bit of a blink of what we did in this hackathon. Please for the next slide. So the last hackathon that we ran in July of this year, the challenge had 3 different streams. So the overarching theme was enabling nature's autonomous value inside city parks and public green spaces. And then we had 3 different prompts, so to speak, for projects to map onto. The first one is SSI stands for self-sovereign identity of nature. And so here the question was how to empower humans, how to empower non-humans to act in their own right in both the physical and the digital arenas. The second stream was dedicated to non-human economics. And here comes the question of developing value capture and incentive models that enable nature to express values beyond scarcity, extraction, and exploitation. And the third stream was dedicated to community stewardship, where we invited teams to build tools that stimulate curiosity, empower and incentivize the broader public to care for nature in new ways. We had 8 participating teams, and they built very different and interesting projects, and one of them will feature just in a second in Rutger's presentation. Next slide, please. So where does this leave my talk here on this panel? What is the role of international environmental law? We believe that law is an important vehicle for both advancing social change, but as well for preserving an unjust status quo. What we like to advance are ideas that move away from protecting the environment, as we heard this morning, toward enabling the agency of nature. What does that mean for law? Let's try to express this by way of asking questions. Is Terra Zero's self-owning tree that runs on a DAO a legal subject? Is it a legal object? Is it neither? Where does the tree start and where does it end? Is the mycorrhizal network part of it? How about computational infrastructure that is upholding the blockchain? We believe that part of the problem is that it's hard to break through conventional modes of thought and find ways to step outside of the box. So this is where we believe our contribution lies. We hope that we can spark the creativity of lawyers to bring their expertise to this field and to be creative with new legal categories and concepts that enable the agency of nature. Next slide, please. So our goal is to build a community to think and experiment together. We see ourselves as a foundation that fosters and develops applied research, cutting across disciplines and professions. And as Victor so beautifully said, we are trying to develop a common language across all these fields and disciplines. Fortunately, we have the best possible partner for matching our innovative ambitions in the field of new modes and scales of interactive collaboration. We have been working together with the Odyssey Network ever since the beginnings. And so I would by now say, thank you very much for your attention. Rutger, over to you and to the Odyssey Network.
Thank you, Andrea. So how do you get this coders, scientists, all this information, policymakers, and make them collaborate, co-create? For that, that's one of some of the questions that Rutger will address in his talk, in his inviting title, Creating Collaborative Collectives for Human Intelligence, Common Ground for Grassroots Regenerative AI. And let me just introduce him very briefly. Rutger is the founder and CEO of Odyssey.org. It's an open source online incubator for multi-stakeholder collaboration that connects governmental, corporate, scientific, and non-for-profit organization with anyone that can contribute. And I stress that, anyone. It's really open invitation that will contribute to building those solutions for complex 21st century challenges, often UN and environment related. So Rutger, please join us.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for the introduction. Good to see you again. Also good to see you, Andrea. And you both look great. Hello, everyone watching and attending the meeting. And also thank you, Nicholas, for putting a lot of effort into getting us all together. So I would like to start by expressing my excitement. If I listen to the story of David, to see what people are doing on the ground to get different worlds together and finding new lenses. With data, we can see things that seem to be unobservable, but by collecting that data and by interpreting that data with different fields of science, we can gain unprecedented insights that can lead not just to new answers, but also to new questions. And we can gain different perspective altogether. And I think this is what is needed also to bring us as humans closer together. In times that feel sometimes very challenging. We see also that whatever challenges us in the broader sense of the word seems to be all about obstacles. And sometimes we see that these challenges can be polarizing. Challenges can be in the environmental space, social, economical space, but we are mostly interested in when those challenges are multi-stakeholder by nature. And when we consider nature as a key stakeholder, we could do the same, for example, for future generations. Then almost all the challenges that are in our social, economical, environmental scope are multi-stakeholder by nature. And what you can see in this first slide is how we used to bring people together to work on complex challenges. Andrea mentioned already the hackathon approach. This hackathon approach brings so many different fields together on what we say as the Dutch, a new kind of polder that say we are all on the same side of the table and we acknowledge that there are perhaps in the field of such a challenge, more questions than answers. The photo you're seeing seems almost unreal in these times of COVID. But one of the important challenges, there were 21 challenges in this hackathon in 2019. And one of them was, how can we scale protecting wildlife and their environment? And it was led by Willy Smits, who is doing amazing regenerative rainforest building work on Borneo, where he integrates basically the economical perspective, the social perspective with the environmental perspective, so that people who live in the parts of the country that has been wasted by palm oil farmers can rebuild kind of their environment and even make more money than they would with palm oil schemes. So that inspired us. He said, we have to kind of outcompete the destructive systems and build new systems that are better for nature and for people, and get towards a new forms of symbiosis. I think what struck me when I met Nicholas is that he said, well, at some point environmental law emerged, and I feel he was right at that effort of enabling it to emerge a couple of decades ago. But the idea that humans came up with a way to think about how nature can be protected, and then thinking about, okay, can we move beyond protection, and can we go to a completely new, a completely new relationship with nature that enables us both to thrive even more? And can we, with this approach, find new questions and answers that enable us to better protect nature because we have an explicit interest? I know that we are amongst people that don't need that interest, but it could potentially help. And if it could, then perhaps discover it. So can I have the next slide? Because what you can see here is a very different environment. And because of COVID, we had to bring again 2,000 people together in 2020 and enable them to collaborate in 21 challenges, in which we were happy to have the challenge of the Sargasses Sea as well, with the Sargasses Sea Commission and ISIL, and also the Sovereign Nature Initiative, but also many other fields like healthcare, energy transition, public services, transport, supply chain, what have you. And if we go to the next slide, so we built an environment where we could scale virtually what David is doing and what Sovereign Nature Initiative is doing. It is bringing people together, enable them to connect on an intrinsic level, and then in this environment, enable productive collaboration, collective value creation, or co-creation, as we call it. And this is such an environment as we are building for the Dutch government, where they will work on complex challenges together with civilians, with the universities, with companies, and civil servants. And if we go to the next slide, then I think what makes the partnership with ISIL, but also with Sovereign Nature Initiative so special, it appeals to the question we ask ourselves: how can we turn our biggest challenges into our brightest achievements? As we know, humans are capable of that. And then the question is, in what way are the old structures, which are rooted in the past century, kind of part of the systemic institutional paradigm? How can we bring those together with completely new emerging structures, as where Sovereign Nature is working on? So this new space enables us to meet in the future. We can work from the new paradigm. We can talk about what kind of paradigm are we working towards. I mean, we can say by 2030 we want to reach X, Y, and Z kind of goals. But what if we could manifest that future into a virtual world where we can actually meet together, where we can actually say, okay, in this paradigm, to get towards this paradigm, this is a challenge that we need to work on. These are the kind of projects that we need to initiate, and where we would need to find funding for. And this is what we are working on. We are here to facilitate communities, organizations, and any individual to collaborate in this new common ground, so to say. And basically, we have scaled, we make scalable and connect what David is working on, what Andrea and Sovereign Nature is working on, with whomever wants to contribute. Could be a 12-year-old kid from Bangalore. It could be the NASA scientists David mentions. And this brings me to the next slide, where I mentioned Bangalore, because it really struck me what the sovereign nature is working on and the vast scope it can have. Could I have the next slide? Yes, and here we have one of the teams in the Sovereign Nature Initiative that participated. And apart from their brilliant name, I mean, they had me at torpedo, basically. They struck me when they introduced themselves. I've visited Bangalore myself. I asked the cab driver over there in Bangalore, what is Bangalore famous for? And he said, the smog. Well, that's not something you would like to hear if you just landed. And then the team lead of Bangalore Torpedo, he said, we used to know Bangalore as the garden city. There were many gardens and parks there, and it was a green city. But now that has all disappeared, and we are the red city, the city of pollution, the city of smog. So if we can make it more interesting for a park to exist than for real estate to exist, because all the stakeholders think that is more valuable, then what if the park would own itself and would start even paying taxes to the city, right? So their ideas, I think, from this team and also others in the Sovereign Nature Initiative, they, from a more, I would say, artistic point of view, explore these new kind of questions where you would also get new kind of answers. And then all of a sudden, it turns a question of should we into how can we? Would it be possible that people bring together funds to buy different parts of the city or blocks in a neighborhood and start and found not a company, but a park there, because they have ideas on how that park relates to the rest of the stakeholders and how it can be of more value than what was there before. Of course, it's easier to start with existing parks, but what if the park is not a cost in the balance sheet of a city or a municipality, but it is actually an upside for everyone? And that's just when we talk about parks, right? It could be way more, like even species or animals could be involved. Andrea was already talking about individual trees. So I think what we want to contribute to is also what Andrea referred to. We would like to contribute to building bridges. At the moment, when we step back, we are seeing an old paradigm that desperately tries to stay, the paradigm of past century, right? And there's a new paradigm emerging where we know we have to do things radically different, where we know we have to build bridges. And at the moment we are seeing those paradigms kind of collide, especially because there are more questions than answers in the emerging world. And this is why I invite everyone to connect with the Sovereign Nature Initiative, to start exploring together an exciting journey where we can discuss and gather around those new kind of questions and go from talking to doing, put things in motion together. And as it is now scalable globally, there is no limit to what can be achieved, literally, because anyone can participate. And this is what true inclusivity is about for me. So this is, I think I have one more slide left. Please check out the Sovereign Nature Initiative. That's all I can say. And we hope to see you together with them in momentum. Thank you.